Welcome back to Vintage Cube. In 15 minutes or less, let's start the clock. Joining a draft already in progress, and Mana Crypt's a great way to start. Now it's like, what do we follow a Crypt up with? I think this is a good question. Generally, I want to do something pretty aggressive with Mana Crypt. I'm looking to curve out. You don't want to be playing Mana Crypt control. You don't want to just be dying 3 damage at a time. So I think Trinket Mage is like an interesting choice. I think Artifacts is a little overdrafted right now. Memory Lapse also interesting. A lot of good blue cards here. I'm not interested in any of the lands, so I think this is just a Barrogoyf, a card that's really overperformed for me. And we get a 3rd pick Solitude, which I think is just wild. We also have Fractured Identity, noted boomer card. This is boomer catnip for me. Very hard to say no. Yeah. Otherwise, this is a pretty light pack, and we're kind of glad that we're not very committed to blue at this point. And like, here are a bunch of lands, City of Traders, which is just kind of another Mana Crypt, and then an Aspirant. And so if I go, all right, we've seen Solitude, we've seen Aspirant, I feel like white might have a path here. Otherwise, all of these cards either feel replacement level or they're duels for, you know, stuff that we don't necessarily want to do. I know Scrublands, that hurts your feelings, but... And then immediately paid off with Adeline. Like, Solitude, Aspirant, Adeline, you're seeing something here. Otherwise, I think that you could talk yourself into like a Remand or Exhume or like cards that exist, but there's no need to overthink it. Here, another pack where we're like, huh, okay, we see one like very mid white creature. We could take No More Lies since we have been seeing white-blue, but like I really want to put this Crypt to work, so I'm like, all right, let's just stay the path with white. And now seeing Lorien revealed, I'm like, oh, like I think we missed an opportunity in blue, but here Oust is like a fine card. It deals with really weird threats where you're like, oh, indestructible Merit Lage token, just go away for a little bit. I don't know what's gotten into me, but I just refuse to take Unexpectedly Absent lately. Esika's Chariot's the exact kind of card you want to curve into with Mana Crypt, and seeing Arwen, whatever the Bounding Spring is from Bloomburrow, and a Goyf, and Unexpectedly Absent all in a pack, I'm like, oh, white-green clearly is a lane that's open, so Chariot, let's just go for it and see what happens. It also works well with, like, if we wind up going wide with Adeline, you know, and there's some other options in this cube. It's kind of a good go wide pick. And then Intrepid Adversary. There's your go wide payoff. I knew it was coming right around the corner. We pass Winds of Abandon, which is great removal for just a little bit of fixing here. It's not a great land, we can't fetch it, but you know what? It casts Esika's Chariot. And then this decision just comes down to like, do you hate a Bolas's Citadel or do you take a Nissa you probably won't play? This isn't the kind of deck that should be too afraid of a Bolas's Citadel, so we just take Nissa. Here we end up wheeling that Scrubland we had to apologize to in Dot the Triumphs, just a slower Scrubland. Exhume this late is really, really weird, and then followed up by a Corpse Dance. This is definitely something that like catches our eye, along with Collective Brutality. What's happening here? I want to pause here because I think this is a really pivotal moment. Of course, you have to take a Mox, but we see 4th Aerolingus, we see Strip Mine, then we also see Animate Dead. We just picked up 3 kind of decent black reanimate cards in that at the end of a pack, so like you're thinking, okay, if this Animate Dead wheels, are we just in the wrong lane? And then we see a Swords to Plowshares, obviously ace removal, but we see Reanimate too, and we go like, wow, this could have been a goated Reanimate deck. We would have had Exhume, Animate Dead, and Reanimate. And that's like 2 picks into pack 2. That's the bulk of your reanimation package. It's already out of the way. You can just go and find the creatures you need. Unfortunately, because we were just getting hooked up in white, that's not our path. Here, I think I just punted this pick. I'm pretty sure I took Flage, and you could just really justify like a Vampiric Tutor here. We do decide to play all of these black cards, feels really good. At what point are we splashing enough red that we could escape a Flage? Underground Mortuary would have even been like a realistic pick. We can surveil a creature into the graveyard, that's always good. We're just taking the best card, I guess. I want to pause here because I think this is another really important pick. We have a few different valid cards in Thoughtseize, Archon, Sowing Mycospawn, Metamorph, and even like a Sunfall. So Archon gives us a really, really solid reanimation target if we wanted to go that route. If we wanted to move into white-black, Thoughtseize is, I think, one of the better cards in the cube right now. Mycospawn actually functions if we are this Selesnya deck that Emerald and Mana Crypt mean that we could realistically use it to pick off a land and fetch something pretty early. Here I decide, let's see what's going on with Reanimator. Archon is that good, and, you know, with a couple Mana Rocks, maybe we cast it early, maybe we don't. Sadly, our new commitment to black does not give us enough sources for a Dauthi Voidwalker, so I think that we just end up taking a land here, and I'm guessing it was a silent clearing, or... oh no, did we... oh no. Cathar Commando, I can't quit you. Here, if we had stayed on the Selesnya path, we're happy to take a Sentinel. Turn 1 Sentinel off of a Crypt is just a very, very good thing to do early. Instead, we just take the fixing. This is a very responsible draft at this point. Always happy to just snap take a Palace Jailer over Lily, which would give us a discard outlet. That's going to be one of our problems if we want to be white-black Reanimator, so you just don't have a ton of ways to discard. Speaking of ways to discard, we pick up a Bone Shards here. This is between that, like Eagles of the North, which does fetch us any of our colors right now, and Elite Spellbinder, which can help us kind of pick off some of those more troublesome cards in our opponent's hand. It at least buys us time to execute a reanimation strategy. Here we take a Lingering Souls, great card if we do like Intrepid Adversary, Adeline, Asika's Chariot, go wide stuff. And it gives us a token to sacrifice for Bone Shards. Then we get like an Esper Sentinel, that Steel Seraph Wheels. We take a Sunfall, we get our Painland back. Like, this just kind of fills out, but nothing too critical there. Pick 3, pack 1, there's very little here for us. I would love to play this Psychic Frog, but we can't be that irresponsible. So it's really a Wooded Foothills that fetches one of our lands, a Guardian Scalelord, which we don't have tremendous targets for, or like an Unearth. We don't want to play Stitcher Supplier and Reanimator decks, so there's just not a lot here. And speaking of not a lot, the packs have turned on us at this point. We're going to take a Skyclave Apparition here. I don't think that there's really a case for any other card in the pack. Fatal Push will probably wheel, and Ancient Tomb, we're just not set up to be an Ancient Tomb deck anymore. We could have had like Tomb, Crypt, City of Traders trying to play really ahead in terms of mana, but a lot of our cards require pips. We did miss out on a Thoughtseize. We pick up an Inquisition, which we're happy to have. Just a way to kind of fish out their hand. I think that you could also make a case for Imperial Seal. In a loose combo deck like this, you do need tutors. They're going to be essentially extra copies of the very few cards that you have that execute your deck. So, I don't know. I think that I would rather be able to protect an opening start with Inquisition than go and find something loose. This pack's bonkers. If we pause here, Flash plus all of these cool reanimation targets, and then like some very just utility cards for us. So the problem with our reanimation strategy at this point is we have one target, which is Archon of Cruelty. I don't know how all in we can be on a single Archon. We can't cast Flash. So at this point, our entire reanimation strategy that is all of like a couple cards revolves around Archon of Cruelty. So that's really bad, because if we draw our 3 reanimation spells, what are we getting back? Like a Barrogoyf? Like, woo! Great, but not really that powerful in Vintage Cube. So we need like a Vaultborn Tyrant or an Atali, but we'll never be able to hardcast those. So we're just really in a bad position here. We've kind of morphed into this deck that A, doesn't exist, and B, isn't coming together. So through that lens, we just take Mother of Ruins. It's fine. Who would I love to be able to do Lurrus things, but it is too late for the kitty. Meow. Instead, we just take a Smuggler's Copter as a discard outlet for our one Archon, and we're really just laser focused in on something that we're doing that isn't really a plan, which is bad news. And so this is like what a tanked draft looks like. You are picking like mid to bad cards to try and make some of your good cards great. You really have to identify when you're too far down the rabbit hole. Like when you see a Smuggler's Copter and you're like, this is what's gonna make my white-black Reanimator deck work. you gotta think about the decisions that have led you to this point. And here we could take like a triplicate Titan that we'll never be able to cast and hopefully could pitch, or we can just take a responsible card and Reprieve. And I think we take Reprieve, yay. We know that there is a Reanimate and an Animate Dead that have gone around, so we're just going to take a Soul Guide and Lantern here so that we don't auto-lose to those cards. And so if we pause here, like, I think that I am way too in my head about this still being a Reanimation deck because we have a single Exhume and a Corpse Dance. So I'm like, okay, well, we take this Life and Death over a Grave Titan, which should just be a serviceable, castable creature, or Elspeth, which could work really well with, like, Adeline. We could make tokens, like, not a bad card. Instead, we take Life and Death, and we really have nothing to get back with it. Here, Unearth's just a fine card. We can bring most of our creatures back with it. We wheel a Seal, which is fine. Emrakul, could we discard it? No, because most of our discards are attack triggers, which is real bad. Like, Barrogoyf could put it into the graveyard, and then we Corpse Dance it, and it goes away at end of turn. Like, just not ideal. So, the rest of this pack's just real not great news for us. So really quick, before I do a build in on these 64 persons, I will go through and just rank all of my cards from what are the most powerful things I have access to like what are the most replaceable, and just lay it out because it really helps me get an idea for where I want to go with the deck. And I recommend doing this just in general. Like, have all of your 24th cards in kind of a stack and look at them. Look at how they relate to the best cards in your pool too. Match 1, we're against Jeskai Control, and we just get an early Barrogoyf that kind of goes all the way. They can't come up with a good answer to it. We see a Fractured Identity in their hand that goes bye-bye, and then we know that they have Pyrogoyf, which is really bad against Barrogoyf, so we just kind of go all the way using a couple reanimation spells at key times to get back some cool answers out of our graveyard, but notably not an Archon, even though we dig like through 70% of our library. Then game 2, we live the dream of a turn 1 Asika's Chariot. Unfortunately, they do find an answer in Embereth Shieldbreaker, and we're kind of like in this weird position where we could use a second white mana with Palace Jailer and Adeline. Not being able to cast either feels like we might let this slip through our hands. Fortunately, we do get there on our white mana. We use Palace Jailer to take out a Fury, which puts us in a super sketchy spot, because if they can like flash in a flyer and get the Monarchy back, then Fury just gets to ETB twice, which is an actual recipe for disaster. Fortunately, we see our old buddy Barrogoyf again, yay, do some serious work for us while keeping up a Smuggler's Copter in case they try and crack back, and we get the win. Match number 2, I think, is actually a favorable one for us. We're against Gruul, like elves and big stuff early, and I don't hate our position, but unfortunately Pest Infestation leaves them with 4 tokens, and we just like never really come back from that. Game number 2 might be one of the most devastating losses I've had in a while. We are so far ahead on board. We have Bomb. We have Asika's Chariot. We have a Palace Jailer. We have them down to 6. They cast Trumpeting Carnosaur. What's the worst thing that they could hit off of this? If you said Fiery Confluence, you are right, and I feel bad. From there, if we top deck an Archon, we just win. Unfortunately, they draw big beefos, we draw nothing, and that's it for our 64-person tournament. This has been an early morning edition of Vintage Cube in 15 minutes or less. I would probably say maybe 10 minutes or less. This is what happens when you lose, and you make little iced coffee noises. Thanks for checking it out. We'll have another video up in, days maybe.